Sarah Martinez stepped through the doors of the military recruitment office, her heart pounding with anticipation. At 22, she had dreamed of serving her country since childhood, despite the challenges that came with being born with severe hearing loss. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she approached the reception desk, where a young corporal looked up from his paperwork. "I'm here to enlist in the Navy," Sarah signed, her hands moving with practiced precision. The corporal's face immediately shifted from professional courtesy to confusion, then to barely concealed annoyance. "Ma'am, I don't understand what you're doing with your hands," he said slowly, speaking louder than necessary. "Are you deaf?" Sarah nodded and pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to show him. The corporal read it and shook his head. "Look, I don't think the military is the right place for someone like you. Maybe you should consider other options," but Sarah wasn't deterred. She had spent years preparing for this moment, maintaining peak physical condition and studying military protocols. She handed him a folder containing her medical documentation and a letter from her doctor explaining her condition and capabilities. What the corporal didn't know was that Sarah's hearing loss had actually enhanced her other senses and abilities in ways that would prove invaluable to military operations. Growing up in a military family, Sarah's father had been a Marine who taught her the importance of service and sacrifice. When she lost most of her hearing at age 5 due to meningitis, her family rallied around her, learning sign language together and never treating her disability as a limitation. Her older brother, who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, had always encouraged her military aspirations. The recruitment office buzzed with activity as other potential enlistees filled out paperwork and took practice tests. Sarah noticed the sideways glances and whispered conversations as people observed her signing, with the increasingly frustrated corporal. Some recruits openly stared, while others made crude gestures behind her back thinking she couldn't see them. "This is going to be a waste of everyone's time," muttered a burly man in line behind her. "What's she going to do when someone's shouting orders? Read lips in the middle of a firefight?" Sarah's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. She had faced this kind of ignorance before, and had learned to channel the frustration into determination. She typed another message on her phone. "I request to speak with a senior recruiting officer about specialized programs." The corporal sighed heavily and disappeared into a back office. Sarah could see him through the glass partition, gesticulating animatedly as he spoke to someone on the phone. When he returned, his expression had shifted slightly, though skepticism still clouded his features. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez will see you in 10 minutes, he said. "But I'm telling you now, don't get your hopes up. The military has standards, and communication is critical in life or death situations." As Sarah waited, she observed the other recruits going through their initial processing. She noticed details others missed: the nervous tapping of fingers, the way someone favored their left leg, the micro-expressions that revealed anxiety or confidence. Her visual acuity had been sharpened by years of relying primarily on sight, and her ability to read body language was extraordinary. A young woman sitting nearby struck up a conversation, speaking clearly so Sarah could read her lips. "I'm Jessica. Are you really trying to join the Navy?" Sarah nodded and signed her response, which Jessica didn't understand. Sarah pulled out her phone again. "Yes, I've wanted this my whole life." Jessica looked impressed. "That's really brave. I don't think I could handle military life if I couldn't hear orders being shouted." What neither Jessica nor anyone else in that room knew was that Sarah had been training in secret for years, working with a former Navy SEAL instructor who had recognized her unique potential. Her hearing loss had forced her to develop exceptional situational awareness, and her ability to remain calm under pressure was remarkable. She had also become proficient in multiple forms of silent communication that went far beyond basic sign language. The door to the back office opened, and Staff Sergeant Rodriguez emerged, a stern-looking woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She gestured for Sarah to follow her, and as they walked past the other recruits, Sarah caught fragments of their whispered comments. "This should be interesting," someone snickered. Sarah squared her shoulders and followed the staff sergeant, unaware that this meeting would set in motion a series of events that would challenge everyone's assumptions about what it meant to serve in the military. The fluorescent lights reflected off her determined expression as she prepared to fight for her right to serve her country, regardless of what obstacles stood in her way. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's office was spartanly decorated with military commendations and photos from various deployments. She gestured for Sarah to take a seat across from her desk, then studied the folder the corporal had reluctantly passed along. The silence stretched for several minutes as Rodriguez reviewed Sarah's documentation, her expression unreadable. "Miss Martinez," Rodriguez finally said, looking up, "I have to ask, why the Navy? Why not pursue civilian opportunities where your hearing wouldn't be considered a liability?" Sarah had prepared for this question. She pulled out her tablet and began typing rapidly. "My father served in the Marines. My brother completed 2 tours in Afghanistan. Service runs in my family, and my hearing loss doesn't define my capabilities. I've been training for years and believe I can contribute uniquely to naval operations." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Training how? And what makes you think you can handle the physical and mental demands when you can't even hear basic commands?" What Rodriguez didn't realize was that she was speaking to someone who had spent the last 3 years training under Marcus Thompson, a retired Navy SEAL who had lost his leg in Iraq and had become passionate about helping individuals with disabilities realize their potential. Marcus had put Sarah through grueling physical training that rivaled official SEAL preparation, focusing on her enhanced visual awareness and ability to operate in complete silence. Sarah typed her response carefully. "I understand you have concerns, but I'd like to request the opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities rather than be judged solely on assumptions about my limitations." Before Rodriguez could respond, there was a commotion outside the office. Through the glass partition, they could see the corporal from earlier engaged in a heated discussion with a tall, distinguished man in civilian clothes. The man's posture and bearing screamed military, despite his casual attire. Rodriguez frowned and excused herself, stepping outside to join the conversation. Sarah watched through the glass as the 3 of them spoke in hushed, intense tones. The corporal kept gesturing toward Rodriguez's office, clearly agitated, while the civilian man remained calm but authoritative. After several minutes, Rodriguez returned with the civilian, who extended his hand to Sarah. "Miss Martinez, I'm Commander James Harrison, retired Navy. I understand you're interested in serving." Sarah shook his hand firmly and noticed immediately that his grip was testing her, assessing her strength and confidence. She met his gaze steadily and typed on her tablet, "Yes, sir. I'm prepared to prove I can meet any challenge the Navy presents." Harrison's eyes flickered with something that might have been approval. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez has shared your file with me. I have to say your test scores are impressive, and your physical fitness evaluation results are outstanding. But we need to discuss the practical realities." What Sarah didn't know was that Commander Harrison was actually still active duty, working in a classified capacity to identify and recruit individuals with unique skill sets for special operations. He had been alerted to her application through channels that monitored for unusual cases that might have potential beyond traditional military roles. "Miss Martinez," Harrison continued, "I'd like to propose something unconventional. Instead of the standard enlistment process, would you be willing to undergo a specialized evaluation? It would be more challenging than typical recruitment, but it would give you a fair opportunity to demonstrate your actual capabilities." Sarah's pulse quickened. This wasn't what she had expected, but it sounded like the chance she had been hoping for. She typed quickly, "What would this evaluation involve?" "Physical challenges, problem-solving under pressure, team exercises, and scenarios designed to test adaptive communication skills. You'd be evaluated alongside other candidates with various backgrounds. The key would be proving that your hearing loss is irrelevant to mission success." Rodriguez looked skeptical. "Commander, with all due respect, we have protocols for a reason. Safety isn't just about individual capability. It's about unit cohesion and communication under fire." Harrison turned to her with a slight smile. "Staff Sergeant, some of the most effective military operations in history have relied on silent communication and enhanced situational awareness. Miss Martinez's condition might be exactly what certain specialized units need." Through the office window, Sarah could see the other recruits had noticed the unusual activity. The corporal who had initially dismissed her was now pacing nervously, occasionally glancing toward Rodriguez's office with obvious anxiety. Word was spreading that something significant was happening. Sarah typed her response with steady fingers. "I accept whatever evaluation you think is appropriate. I'm confident in my abilities and ready to prove them." Harrison nodded approvingly. The evaluation will take place over 3 days at a specialized facility. You'll be competing against candidates from various military branches, including some who are already active duty seeking advancement. Fair warning, the dropout rate is typically around 70%. When do we start? Sarah typed, her determination evident even in her written words. Next Monday, 0600 hours. Report to the address Staff Sergeant Rodriguez will provide. Bring minimal personal items. Everything else will be provided. One more thing, Miss Martinez. Harrison paused, his expression becoming more serious. This evaluation isn't just about proving you can serve. It's about proving you can excel in ways others cannot. Are you prepared for that level of challenge? Sarah stood, her posture straight and confident. She looked Harrison directly in the eyes as she typed her final message of the day. Sir, I've been preparing for this challenge my entire life. I won't just meet your expectations, I'll exceed them. As she left the office, passing through the main recruitment area, the atmosphere had changed. The casual dismissal had been replaced by curious speculation. The corporal who had initially tried to turn her away now watched her with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. Sarah walked out of the building with her head held high, unaware that her journey was about to take her into a world where her perceived weakness would become her greatest strength, and where she would soon encounter challenges that would test every assumption about disability, capability, and what it truly meant to serve with honor. The specialized training facility was located 2 hours outside the city, nestled in a forested area that seemed designed to intimidate potential candidates. As Sarah's taxi pulled up to the heavily guarded entrance, she could see other vehicles dropping off men and women in civilian clothes, all carrying similar small duffel bags and wearing expressions of nervous determination. At the main gate, a Marine sergeant checked identification with military precision. When Sarah handed over her paperwork and attempted to sign a greeting, the sergeant's reaction was immediate and harsh. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "Are you lost, lady? This isn't some kind of summer camp for disabled people." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him her authorization from Commander Harrison. The sergeant read it twice, his frown deepening with each word. "This has got to be some kind of mistake," he muttered, but he stamped her paperwork and waved her through. The main building was a converted military barracks, functional and imposing. Sarah joined a group of about 30 other candidates gathering in what appeared to be a briefing room. The demographics were diverse, men and women ranging from their early 20s to mid-30s, representing different branches of the military in various backgrounds. As Sarah entered, conversations gradually died down as people noticed her signing to herself, a habit she had developed to stay mentally sharp. A muscular man with army insignia on his civilian jacket nudged his companion and spoke loudly enough for others to hear. "Great. They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel now. What's next, blind pilots?" Several others laughed, though a few looked uncomfortable with the crude comment. A woman with short blonde hair who appeared to be Air Force spoke up. "Maybe she's lost. Someone should help her find the right building." Sarah had learned long ago that responding to every slight would exhaust her energy better spent on her goals. She found a seat near the back and observed the other candidates, noting their body language, the way they clustered in groups based on service branch, and who seemed confident versus who was trying to project confidence to mask their nervousness. At exactly 600 hours, 3 instructors entered the room. The lead instructor was a tall, weathered man with the bearing of someone who had seen serious combat. His voice was clear and commanding as he addressed the group. "I'm Chief Petty Officer Williams. For the next 3 days, you will be tested in ways that will push you beyond what you think are your limits. Some of you will quit. Some of you will be eliminated. A few of you might discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed." He gestured to his companions. "Master Sergeant Lopez and Lieutenant Commander Chen will be assisting with various evaluation components. Before we begin, understand this. There are no accommodations here. There are no excuses. There is only performance and results." His eyes swept the room and lingered briefly on Sarah. "Anyone who feels they're not ready for this level of challenge can leave now with no shame. The door is behind you." No one moved, though Sarah noticed several candidates shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "First exercise begins in 30 minutes, Williams continued. "Change into the gear provided in your assigned lockers. You'll find everything organized by candidate number." "Questions?" A hand shot up from the middle of the room. "Chief, what exactly are we being evaluated for?" The briefing materials were pretty vague. Williams smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. You're being evaluated for your potential to think, adapt, and perform under conditions that would break most people. The specific roles will depend on how well you perform. As the group dispersed to find their lockers, Sarah noticed she had been assigned number 23. The gear provided was standard military workout attire, but she noticed small differences: fabric that seemed more technical, boots that were clearly designed for varied terrain, and equipment that suggested water-based activities. In the locker room, the comments became more direct. "I still can't believe they let her in here," someone said. "This is going to be dangerous for everyone if she can't hear warnings or instructions." "Maybe it's some kind of diversity experiment," another voice added. "Check a box and show how inclusive the military is becoming." Sarah methodically changed into her gear, checking every piece of equipment with the thoroughness Marcus Thompson had taught her. She caught her reflection in a mirror and saw her father's determination in her eyes, her brother's steady resolve in her posture. When the group reconvened, Chief Williams led them outside to what appeared to be an obstacle course. But unlike anything Sarah had seen in recruitment videos, the course incorporated elements that clearly required not just physical strength and agility, but problem-solving and adaptability. "This first challenge is individual," Williams announced. "Each candidate will complete the course while being timed. However, the course includes elements that will require you to adapt to changing conditions. Some obstacles will shift. Some will present choices. Your score depends not just on completion time, but on decision-making under pressure." He pointed to Sarah. "Candidate 23, you're first." The announcement caused a stir among the other candidates. Starting with the candidate everyone expected to fail was either cruel or strategic. Sarah wasn't sure which. As she approached the starting line, Sarah could hear fragments of conversations behind her. "This should be over quick. At least we'll know what we're dealing with." I actually feel bad for her. What none of them realized was that Sarah had trained on obstacle courses that made this one look simple. Marcus Thompson had designed challenges specifically to test her enhanced visual processing and ability to navigate complex environments, using senses other than hearing. Chief Williams positioned himself where Sarah could see his lips clearly. "The course is yours, Candidate 23. Show us what you've got." Sarah took her position at the starting line, her muscles coiled and ready. She had spent years preparing for a moment like this, and she could feel every hour of training, every moment of doubt she had overcome, and every person who had believed in her potential flowing through her veins. The starting signal would be visual, a flag drop rather than a whistle, she assumed. But as she watched Chief Williams raise his hand, Sarah realized that this first challenge was about to shatter every assumption the other candidates had made about her capabilities. She was about to show them that sometimes what appears to be a weakness can be the source of extraordinary strength. Chief Williams dropped the flag, and Sarah exploded from the starting line with a fluidity that immediately silenced the skeptical murmurs behind her. The first obstacle was a series of walls of varying heights that required different techniques to overcome. While most candidates would rely on hearing to gauge their footing and balance, Sarah's enhanced proprioception allowed her to navigate each wall with remarkable precision. Her visual processing, sharpened by years of compensating for her hearing loss, allowed her to see details others missed. She noticed subtle variations in the wall surfaces that indicated the safest grip points, caught sight of hidden handholds that weren't immediately obvious, and identified the optimal path through a maze-like section that had others hesitating and backtracking. The fourth obstacle proved to be the first real test of adaptability. It was a rope bridge that began stable, but started swaying unpredictably as she moved across it. Sarah realized immediately that the instability was artificially induced. Someone was controlling it remotely. Instead of fighting the movement, she used her exceptional balance and visual focus to move with the swaying, actually using the momentum to propel herself forward faster than if the bridge had been stable. Behind her, she could sense the shift in the observer's attention. The casual, dismissive chatter had stopped, replaced by focused watching. Chief Williams was making notes on his clipboard, his expression unreadable. The fifth obstacle was where Sarah's unique training truly began to show. It was a section designed to simulate navigating through a building in low-light conditions, with obstacles that moved and changed position. Most candidates would rely heavily on hearing to navigate safely. But Sarah moved through the space like she could. See in the dark, what the observers didn't understand was that Marcus Thompson had trained her to use micro-vibrations through her feet and hands to sense movement and obstacles. She could feel the displacement of air when objects moved near her, and her peripheral vision had been trained to catch movement that others would miss entirely. As she emerged from the low-light section, Sarah caught sight of the timer display. She was not only keeping pace with the target time, she was significantly ahead of it. More importantly, she could see the other candidates, watching her with expressions that had shifted from dismissive amusement to genuine surprise. The seventh obstacle was a water challenge that required candidates to navigate across a series of floating platforms while carrying equipment. The platforms were designed to be unstable, and the water below was clearly deep enough that falling would require swimming to safety while maintaining control of the gear. Sarah approached the water section and immediately analyzed the pattern of platform movement. Her visual acuity allowed her to see how each platform's stability was affected by weight distribution, and she planned her route across before stepping onto the first platform. Where other candidates might rely on audio cues to judge the stability of each platform, Sarah used her hands and feet to read the micro-movements and adjust her approach accordingly. Halfway across, one of the platforms suddenly tilted dramatically. It was clearly a test designed to see how candidates would react to unexpected instability. Sarah didn't panic or grab frantically for balance. Instead, she shifted her weight smoothly and used the tilting platform as a launching point to leap to the next stable surface, landing with perfect balance while maintaining control of her equipment. The watching candidates were no longer making jokes. Several were pointing and talking in animated whispers, clearly reassessing their initial assumptions. The final obstacle was the most complex, a section that required problem-solving under pressure. Candidates had to figure out how to get their entire team of equipment through a series of barriers using only the tools provided, but the twist was that the solution required coordination and communication that most would assume impossible for someone with hearing loss. Sarah studied the challenge for 30 seconds, then began implementing a solution that demonstrated she had been thinking several steps ahead from the beginning. She used a system of visual signals and rope work that was so efficient and elegant that it became clear she wasn't just completing the obstacle, she was mastering it. As she crossed the finish line, the electronic timer displayed her completion time. Not only had she finished the course, she had posted the fastest time in the facility's records for that particular course configuration. The silence from the other candidates was profound. Chief Williams approached her as she was catching her breath. His expression was completely different from when she had started. The skepticism had been replaced by professional interest and something that might have been respect. "Candidate 23, he said, positioning himself where she could read his lips clearly. That was an impressive run. Where did you learn to navigate obstacles with that level of precision? Sarah pulled out her phone to type her response, but Williams held up a hand. Actually, let me ask you this. Can you teach some of these techniques to other candidates? The question hung in the air as the other candidates absorbed what they had just witnessed. The woman they had dismissed as a liability had just demonstrated capabilities that none of them possessed. Moreover, the chief instructor was asking her to teach them. Sarah typed her response carefully. I'd be happy to share what I know, but only if they're genuinely interested in learning, rather than just curious about how someone with hearing loss could outperform them. Williams read her response and smiled. This time it was genuinely warm. I think you'll find attitudes around here have just changed significantly. As the other candidates prepared for their individual runs, Sarah noticed a fundamental shift in how they looked at her. The dismissive glances had been replaced by curious respect. Several approached her directly, asking genuine questions about her techniques and training. But Sarah also noticed something else. Chief Williams was talking quietly with Master Sergeant Lopez, and both were looking at her with expressions that suggested her performance had exceeded even their expectations. She had the distinct feeling that completing the obstacle course successfully was only the beginning of what would be asked of her in the coming days. The real tests, she suspected, were just beginning. And based on the way the instructors were now watching her, those tests would be designed not to prove she could keep up with everyone else, but to discover exactly what she was capable of when pushed to her absolute limits. The second day brought team-based challenges that would test not only individual capabilities, but also how well candidates could work together under extreme pressure. Sarah arrived at the briefing room to find the atmosphere completely transformed from the day before. Instead of dismissive whispers, she was greeted with nods of acknowledgement and several candidates who made efforts to communicate with her directly. Lieutenant Commander Chen took the lead for the morning briefing. Today's exercises will test your ability to function as part of a unit. You'll be divided into teams of 5, and each team will face scenarios designed to simulate real combat conditions where communication, trust, and adaptability are critical for survival. Sarah was assigned to Team Alpha, along with Marcus Rivera, an Army Ranger candidate, Jennifer Walsh, Air Force Special Operations, David Park, Marine Corps, and Alex Thompson, Navy Surface Warfare. The composition was clearly intentional. Each member brought different military backgrounds and specialties. Initially, there was awkwardness as the team tried to figure out how to include Sarah in their planning discussions. Marcus, who had been one of the more vocal skeptics the day before, surprised everyone by addressing her directly. "Sarah," he said, making sure she could see his lips clearly. "We need to establish communication protocols that work for all of us. What do you suggest?" It was the first time anyone had asked for her input, rather than making assumptions about her limitations. Sarah pulled out her tablet and typed rapidly. "I can read lips if you face me when speaking. I can also teach you basic tactical hand signals that are more effective than voice communication in many situations. My situational awareness is actually enhanced because I rely entirely on visual and tactile input." Jennifer Walsh leaned forward, interested. "What kind of tactical signals?" Sarah demonstrated a series of hand signals that were far more sophisticated than basic military gestures. These were signals Marcus Thompson had taught her, silent communication techniques used by elite units for stealth operations. David Park whistled softly. "Those are SEAL signals. Where did you learn those?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, then typed her response. "I trained with a retired SEAL instructor who believed my hearing. Loss could be an asset rather than a liability in certain situations." The team exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to understand that Sarah's background was more complex than they had assumed. The first team challenge was announced: a search and rescue simulation in a building complex filled with smoke, limited visibility, and hidden obstacles. The team had to locate 3 casualties and evacuate them safely while avoiding simulated enemy contact. "Standard protocols won't work here," Alex Thompson observed. "Communication is going to be nearly impossible with all that smoke and the need to maintain stealth." Sarah typed on her tablet. "This is exactly the type of situation where my training might be most valuable. I've learned to navigate in zero visibility using tactile feedback and air displacement. I can teach you techniques that don't rely on sound or clear sight." As they prepared for the exercise, Sarah took the lead in showing her teammates how to move silently, how to use touch to communicate position and status, and how to read environmental cues that most people missed. The transformation in team dynamics was remarkable. Instead of accommodating her disability, they were learning from her expertise. When they entered the smoke-filled building complex, Sarah's capabilities became immediately apparent. She moved through the environment with confidence that bordered on supernatural, using techniques that allowed her to see obstacles and opportunities that her teammates missed entirely. She located the first casualty within minutes, using vibrations through the floor to detect the heartbeat of the hidden instructor playing the victim role. Her teammates watched in amazement as she communicated the location using precise hand signals, then guided them through an extraction route that avoided all the simulated enemy positions. The second casualty was hidden in a section of the building where conventional search techniques would have been time-consuming and dangerous. Sarah used her enhanced spatial awareness to identify a route through the obstacles that her teammates would never have considered, leading them directly to the target. But it was during the extraction of the third casualty that Sarah's training truly shone. The scenario included a simulated enemy patrol that was using sound detection to locate the rescue team. While her teammates struggled to move silently enough to avoid detection, Sarah took the lead, teaching them how to coordinate their movements and breathing to become virtually invisible. As they successfully completed the exercise, Chief Williams emerged from the observation area with an expression of professional amazement. "Team Alpha, That was the most efficient search and rescue simulation we've ever recorded. Candidate 23, your techniques were unconventional but highly effective. The other teams, who were still struggling with their own simulations, had stopped to watch Team Alpha's performance. Word was spreading quickly that the hearing-impaired candidate wasn't just keeping up. She was leading innovative solutions that surpassed traditional military approaches. During the lunch break, Sarah found herself approached by candidates from other teams seeking advice on silent movement and tactical communication. The woman who had been dismissed as potentially dangerous to unit cohesion was now being sought out as an instructor and strategic asset, but the most significant moment came when Master Sergeant Lopez pulled her aside privately. "Candidate Martinez, I need to ask you directly. What was the name of the SEAL instructor who trained you?" Sarah typed her response. "Marcus Thompson retired after losing his leg in Iraq. He runs a private training program for individuals with disabilities who want to serve." Lopez's expression shifted to something approaching awe. "Marcus Ghost Thompson? He was legendary in special operations. If he trained you personally, that explains a lot about what we've been observing." "You know him?" Sarah typed. "Know him? He saved my life in Fallujah." If Marcus Thompson says you're ready for military service, then you're not just ready, you're probably overqualified for standard military roles. As the afternoon brought more complex team challenges, Sarah realized that her journey had taken an unexpected turn. She had come to prove she could serve despite her hearing loss. Instead, she was discovering that her unique skills might be exactly what certain specialized military units had been looking for. The question was no longer whether she could serve in the military. The question was becoming what level of service she was being prepared for, and whether she was ready for the kind of responsibilities that came with capabilities few people possessed. On the final day of evaluation, Sarah arrived to find only 12 candidates remaining from the original 30. The intensity of the challenges had eliminated more than half the group, but those who remained had developed a strong sense of mutual respect and camaraderie that transcended their initial assumptions about each other. Commander Harrison appeared, for the first time since the initial briefing, accompanied by two individuals whose bearing and demeanor immediately suggested they were active special operations personnel. The atmosphere in the room shifted to one of heightened attention and anticipation. "Congratulations to those who have made it this far," Harrison began. "Today's final evaluation will determine not only who successfully completes this program, but what opportunities will be available to you going forward. Some of you may find that your military careers take directions you never anticipated." He gestured to his companions. "Captain Morrison and Chief Warrant Officer Stevens are here to observe today's exercises and conduct individual interviews with select candidates based on performance." The final challenge was the most complex yet, a multi-phase operation that required the remaining candidates to work as a complete unit to accomplish objectives that seemed almost impossible given their numbers and resources. They had to infiltrate a simulated enemy compound, gather intelligence, rescue hostages, and extract safely while being actively hunted by an opposing force. What made the exercise particularly challenging was that it had to be completed with minimal verbal communication. The scenario assumed they were operating in an environment where radio silence was essential and voice communication would compromise their position. For the other candidates, this restriction was a significant handicap. For Sarah, it was exactly the type of operation she had been training for her entire life. As the team prepared for the mission, Sarah found herself naturally taking on a leadership role in planning the approach. Her teammates, who had learned to trust her expertise over the previous days, followed her suggestions for movement patterns, timing, and contingency planning. "Sarah's right," Marcus Rivera said during the planning phase. "If we're going to move through that compound without being detected, we need to operate the way she's been teaching us." The infiltration phase went flawlessly. Sarah led the team through the perimeter defenses using routes and techniques that seemed to make them invisible. Her ability to detect the smallest environmental changes allowed her to guide the team past sensors and guards that would have detected conventional approaches. During the intelligence gathering phase, Sarah's visual acuity proved invaluable. She could read documents and identify important information from distances that amazed her teammates. And her ability to memorize visual details meant that the team could gather and retain more intelligence than would typically be possible. But It was during the hostage rescue that Sarah's full capabilities were revealed. The hostages were being held in a section of the compound that was heavily guarded and had multiple environmental hazards that made conventional rescue approaches extremely dangerous. Sarah analyzed the situation and proposed a solution that initially seemed impossible. She would infiltrate the hostage area alone, using stealth techniques that required absolute silence and precise timing. Her teammates would create diversions at calculated moments to draw attention away from her approach. What happened next would later be described by the observing instructors as one of the most impressive individual performances they had ever witnessed in military training. Sarah moved through the compound like a shadow, avoiding guards and obstacles with precision that seemed almost supernatural. She reached the hostages, neutralized their guards using non-lethal techniques that Marcus Thompson had taught her, and coordinated their evacuation using hand signals and silent communication. The extraction phase required the entire team to work together while being pursued by the opposing force. Sarah's enhanced situational awareness allowed her to identify escape routes and safe positions that kept the team ahead of their pursuers, while her silent communication skills enabled coordination that would have been impossible using conventional methods. When the exercise was completed, the observing instructors were clearly amazed by what they had witnessed. The team had not only succeeded in all objectives, they had done so with an efficiency and stealth that exceeded the performance standards for the exercise. During the individual interviews that followed, Sarah was called in to meet with Captain Morrison and Chief Warrant Officer Stevens. Their questions were unlike anything she had expected from a military evaluation. "Miss Martinez," Captain Morrison began, "based on what we've observed over the past 3 days, we believe you have capabilities that would be valuable in very specialized military roles. Are you familiar with naval special warfare?" Sarah's pulse quickened. She typed her response carefully. "I know about SEALs and other special operations units, but I always assumed my hearing loss would make me ineligible for those roles." Chief Stevens leaned forward. "Under normal circumstances, you would be correct. But your case is unique. Your training background combined with your enhanced sensory capabilities and demonstrated performance suggests you might be exactly what we need for certain types of operations where traditional communication methods are actually disadvantageous." Captain Morrison opened a classified folder. "There are missions where the ability to operate in complete silence, to read environmental cues that others miss, and to maintain perfect situational awareness without relying on audio input are not just useful. They're essential. Your hearing loss isn't a disability in those contexts. It's a specialization." Sarah stared at them, hardly believing what she was hearing. She typed rapidly, "Are you saying you want to recruit me for special operations?" "We're saying we want to offer you the opportunity to train for roles that very few people in the world are qualified for," Stevens replied. "The training would be intense, more challenging than what you've experienced here. But based on your performance and Marcus Thompson's endorsement, we believe you have the potential to excel in ways that could make you an invaluable asset to national security." The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, covering details about specialized training programs, security clearances, and the types of missions Sarah might eventually be qualified for. When she finally left the interview room, her head was spinning with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. As the evaluation program concluded, the remaining candidates gathered for a final briefing. Commander Harrison announced the results, explaining that all 12 remaining candidates had successfully completed the program and would be offered various military positions based on their demonstrated capabilities and preferences. When he called Sarah's name, the room fell silent with anticipation. "Candidate Martinez, based on your exceptional performance and unique qualifications, you are being offered the opportunity to begin specialized training that could lead to roles in naval special warfare. This is an unprecedented opportunity that reflects not only your individual capabilities but also the military's recognition that diversity of abilities can be a strategic advantage." The other candidates broke into spontaneous applause. These were the same people who had questioned her presence just 3 days earlier, and now they were celebrating her success as if it were their own. Marcus Rivera approached her afterward, his expression serious but respectful. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I thought your hearing loss would make you a liability. Instead, you taught us things that made all of us better soldiers. If you're going into special ops, you're going to be incredible at it. Jennifer Walsh nodded in agreement. You didn't just prove you could keep up with us. You proved you could lead us. That takes a special kind of person. As Sarah prepared to leave the facility, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had entered the recruitment office 3 days earlier, fighting just for the right to serve her country in any capacity. She was leaving with an invitation to train for some of the most elite roles in the military. But more than that, she had fundamentally changed how a group of military professionals thought about disability, capability, and what it meant to serve with distinction. The woman who had been ridiculed for communicating in sign language had revealed skills that made her not just equal to her peers, but uniquely valuable in ways they could never match. As she walked toward the exit, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in the glass doors. She saw her father's determination, her brother's honor, and something new. The confidence of someone who had not only proven her worth but had exceeded every expectation placed on her. The journey ahead would be challenging in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The specialized training would push her to limits beyond what she had experienced. But for the first time in her life, Sarah Martinez knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, preparing for a role that would allow her to serve her country using gifts that made her irreplaceable rather than inadequate. The military had gained not just another recruit, but a warrior whose unique abilities would prove invaluable in operations that required someone who could succeed, where traditional methods would fail, and Sarah had gained something equally valuable,